courtroom was silent as Pam Bondi entered. Her steps measured, her gaze steady, and a small silver cross gleaming subtly at the base of her throat. It was a tense day in federal court, with cameras stationed outside and media crews buzzing about the controversy that had erupted overnight. A civil liberties group had filed a formal complaint, claiming Bondi's visible religious symbol across necklace violated court decorum and impartiality. The judge presiding over the case, known for his rigid interpretation of courtroom protocol, had signaled in pre-trial motions that the matter of religious neutrality would be addressed. Few anticipated what would happen next. As Bondi approached the counsel's table, the judge abruptly addressed her from the bench. "Ms. Bondi, you are in direct violation of court dress policy. That necklace is not permitted." Gasps echoed through the chamber. "Calm, but unflinching," Bondi replied. "Your Honor, with all due respect, I believe this matter involves more than metal and string. It involves the Constitution." It was clear from the first moment that today's proceedings would be about much more than jewelry. The judge, tall man with a reputation for strict adherence to procedure, stared down from his bench. He adjusted his glasses, shuffled a few papers, and continued. "Court decorum is not about personal belief. It's about neutrality. That necklace, however subtle, makes a statement. You are fined $1,000 for noncompliance." The words rang out like a gavel slamming into stone. Bondi blinked, her expression unchanging. She didn't flinch, didn't object. Into her briefcase, and pulled out a copy of the First Amendment. Holding it aloft, she said, "Then let this court take note. This fine, though monetary, is symbolic of a much larger conflict. One that reaches back to the founding of this nation." The spectators in the courtroom stirred. A few whispered. Reporters began typing furiously. Cameras, though prohibited inside, were already rolling outside, and Bondi's quiet defiance was about to become a national headline. This wasn't a courtroom argument anymore. It was a cultural flashpoint. Bondi had taken center stage. The prosecution side remained silent, unsure how to react. The opposing counsel, a man, clearly uneasy with the spectacle, attempted to redirect the hearing back to the case at hand, but the judge refused. "Ms. Bondi has raised a constitutional concern," he said, almost reluctantly. "We will hear her argument in full." Bondi stood, every movement deliberate, and launched into a legal defense not of herself, but of the principle at stake. Citing landmark cases like Tinker v. Des Moines and Burwell v. Hobby Lobby, she drew a line between expression and disruption, arguing that her necklace was not proselytizing, but a quiet expression of identity. Her voice was steady, legal references sharp, and her points airtight. "If this court is to interpret symbolism as influence," she argued, "then we must remove flags, robes, even gavels for all our symbols too." Her argument wasn't just well-crafted, it was brilliant, surgical. She had turned a punitive fine into a constitutional debate. And the courtroom was spellbound. As she spoke, the tone of the courtroom shifted. The judge, once stern and unyielding, began taking notes. Clerks exchanged glances. Observers who had entered skeptical now leaned forward, captivated. What had begun as a confrontation was becoming a masterclass. Bondi's legal genius wasn't just in her knowledge of the lit, was in how she framed the argument. She didn't challenge authority for the sake of rebellion. She challenged it through logic, precedent, and civility. "The law," she said near the conclusion, "must not become so rigid that it forgets its purpose. To protect, not silence. To guard, not shame." The silence in the courtroom was heavy, respectful. When she returned to her seat, there was no applause. This was a court, not a theater, but the energy was undeniable. Even those who disagreed with her couldn't help but admire her command of the room. And a law. Outside, media crews exploded with coverage. News outlets scrambled to cover the exchange. Bondi fined, but fires back with constitutional knockout. Read one headline. "Cross or crime?" asked another. Social media lit up with debate. Hashtags like #Bondi Cross Clash and #First Amendment War trended for days. Commentators from all political stripes weighed in. Some accused Bondi of theatrics, of staging a moment for the cameras. Others called her a hero, a defender of religious liberty in an increasingly secular public space. Television analysts debated whether the judge had overreached. Even prominent legal scholars began publishing op-eds, analyzing Bondi's argument, most of them conceding that she had made a powerful, even unassailable point. No matter where one stood politically, no one could deny that Pam Bondi had shifted the narrative, elevated it beyond just a courtroom dispute. Asterisk back in the courtroom. The judge scheduled a hearing to reconsider the fine, a rare move. Though the fine still stands, he said cautiously, this court will hear further legal argument before final enforcement. Bondi simply nodded. She had made her point. The hearing date would be weeks away, but the message had already been sent. Other lawyers began wearing quiet religious symbols in court, testing whether the reaction would be the same. The issue spilled into public discourse, prompting editorials and even questions in Senate hearings. Bondi had ignited a conversation that spread far beyond her own case. It was the kind of impact most attorneys dream of, not just defending a client or an action, but defending a core constitutional idea. She had done it not through protest, but through precision. The legal world had taken notice. So had the public. Asterisk. In the days that followed, Bondi refused interviews. She released a short statement saying, "My faith is personal, but my rights are not." What happened in that courtroom isn't just about Mitsubao, all of us. Despite the whirlwind, she stayed focused on her current case, a complex interstate fraud trial. But every time she walked into court, the cross necklace remained. She wore it not as a dare, but as a declaration. And strangely, no judge asked her to remove it again. The precedent was informal, but powerful. Bondi had, in effect, redrawn the unspoken rules of courtroom symbolism, not by shouting, but by shining. Her legal prowess, long respected, had now become iconic. Even those who once underestimated her began to speak differently, not just about the necklace, but about the brilliance behind it. Asterisk. Journalists followed Bondi's other court appearances with renewed interest. She gave no more speeches, no dramatic confrontations. But in every case she touched, observers noted the same qualities: precision, strategy, control. Her courtroom presence, once seen as overly poised or carefully curated, now appeared grounded in deeper conviction. Young attorneys, especially women, began citing her case in blogs and law school discussions. She didn't just argue for herself, one wrote. She argued for a space where identity and professionalism aren't mutually exclusive. Meanwhile, the judge in the original case grew quiet. His chambers declined all media inquiries. When pressed, his only statement was, "The matter is under legal review." But insiders whispered that Bondi's argument had reshaped the way the court approached visible expression. Asterisk. Eventually, the fine was rescinded. No fanfare, no apologies, just a formal reversal order filed quietly in the court's docket. Bondi didn't need an announcement. Her point had already echoed through every legal column, media panel, and social media feed. She had taken what could have been a humiliating moment and transformed it into a defining one. Her silver cross now carried a weight far beyond its material value. It had become a symbol of the enduring balance between faith and freedom, between decorum and expression. Pam Bondi had not just worn a necklace into court, she had carried in a principle, wrapped in precedent, anchored by courage. Asterisk. And that courage, forged in courtrooms and written into motions, had become her legacy. The incident was eventually taught in legal ethics courses. Professors dissected her argument as a model for how to confront institutional rigidity with respect and rigor. Pam Bondi hadn't just defended herself, she had defined the conversation. Years from now, when law students study the nuanced clash between personal expression and public duty, they will read her words, analyze her strategy, and remember how one attorney turned a fine into a first-class legal victory. Her legal genius didn't just shine through, it blazed. Asterisk.